Imagine if humans vanished from Earth this very moment. No warnings, no goodbyes. 1 second we're here, the next, gone. In that instant, every machine we control would lose its master. Subways would race into the dark with no one to stop them. Planes would fall from the skies. Cars would crash in chaotic intersections. And in the blink of an eye, the entire global transportation system would collapse. 1 day later, power grids would fail. Only a few faint glimmers from scattered solar panels would remain before the world falls into complete darkness. 1 week later, food would rot. Pets, starving and confused, would break free in search of something to eat. Packs of stray dogs would roam the streets, wondering where their human companions had gone. But pets trapped inside cages, cats, parrots, and countless others, would quietly fade away. 1 month later, underground water pipes would burst, flooding city streets. Worse still, without human oversight, nuclear power plants would spiral out of control, unleashing deadly radiation. Fallout would spread across continents, poisoning the air, water, and soil. Global weather patterns would shift, temperatures would plummet, and for weeks, blizzards would rage across the planet. 6 months later, satellites in orbit would begin drifting, eventually burning up in the atmosphere. On Earth, animals would look up to see a shower of falling lights streaking across the sky. 1 year later, roots and vines would crack through concrete. Rain would wash away human roads. Cities would dissolve into the wilderness. And nature, patient and relentless, would begin to take back what was hers. 5 years later, highways would vanish under waves of green. Forests would rise where suburbs once stood. Nature's healing power would no longer be theory, it would be fact. 20 years later, our once proud skyscrapers would become hollow shelters for wildlife. Birdsong would echo through empty office towers. 50 years later, cars, rusted and broken, would collapse into the earth. Desert winds would swallow entire cities. 100 years later, the climate would be unrecognizable. Coastal cities would sink beneath rising seas, but the oceans would come alive again. Marine life would flourish like it hadn't in centuries. 500 years later, the Eiffel Tower, the Golden Gate Bridge, without human care, would weaken, corrode, and finally collapse. 1,000 years later, landmarks that once defined entire nations would crumble into dust. The last traces of human pride would be erased. 5,000 years later, the air would be cleaner than any living human could remember. Life would be richer, more diverse. Animals would rule the earth once again, and the memory of mankind would exist only in faint, scattered remnants. Tens of thousands of years later, concrete would crumble to sand. Steel would vanish into rust. Perhaps a few monuments might remain. The Great Wall of China, the Egyptian pyramids, maybe the global seed vault in Norway. But our so-called permanent records, stored on paper, hard drives, and the cloud, would be gone in mere centuries. Our belief that we could preserve ourselves forever would be proven wrong. 10,000 years feels unimaginable to us, but to a planet that has existed for 4.6 billion years, it's less than a blink. If Earth's entire history were a single day, humanity's story would be a fraction of a second. Our ancestors fought for thousands of years to stand at the top of the food chain. And yet, in just a few centuries since the Industrial Revolution, we've scarred the planet beyond recognition. Maybe we were wrong all along. Because here's the truth. Without humans, Earth will thrive. But without Earth, humans cannot survive. Every year, countless species disappear forever. At this rate, our planet's resources may not last another century. And if nothing changes, humanity's disappearance won't be a fantasy. It will be reality. This is not just a warning. It's a glimpse into the future we're choosing. And the question is, will we change before it's too late?